That's fine. Okay, yeah. Sounds good. That's good.
Hey, how y'all doing?
Hey.
Yeah. We should have spent the night last night.
That's right, might be a little much.
Well, yeah. They don't supply cots, so.
Man, I get your money's worth this one.
But yeah,
That's a little intimidating.
and heavy. No, and when I go to sleep, I have a broken nose. Right. I told you to just do my phone now for my books and everything that.
You read your books on your phone? Do you say, do you? You have that little tiny phone, you read your book on there?
Well, I mean.
On the iPad?
Well, I used to have a Kindle, and I lost it, and then anything I was going on with it, I show up on my phone, and I thought, I can read this, so, and I don't have that good.
How do you get your eyes to that? I mean, just a little, I mean, I read these book stores and that.
Oh, well, I had to blow them up, but this is already, takes up the whole page. And my Droid is not, it doesn't have a small screen,
Oh.
so,
Yeah.
But I learned some things yesterday from my partner, so that was good. Well, I learned a lot that I didn't know. She said, well, do you, I learned.
First book of British, I think the basic things, but I still go over, I read more than once because it's something just, it is the response, that rebid
Yeah.
for the next book.
Then I go, oh, I forgot that.
Yeah, or I didn't really realize that.
Oh, I know what it was that she told me. It was like if you transfer to a minor, through the state,
We talked about it.
You should-
Tuesday means,
or the one state, or let's see, no,
Tuesday days, you get 6
that's right, 6. And see, I didn't know the majors were 5 and the minors were 6. And then she said that what she does, instead of just doing spades for both of them and then using correction, she does spades for clubs and then no
well, that's
combo.
gonna work too. But I think it's easy to do that. We talked about that.
Well, and I told her, I said, well,
You know, like if I say, she says Tuesdays and then I transfer and I say three clubs and she doesn't want that. She says that we're done.
but yeah,
To me, that's more logical. When I say that to her, if we aren't really on sync, she's going to get in there, well, she wants to work on.
well, you have to know. And
I have to be really.
I told her, I said, I remember if I'll try to do
We have
that way.
Yeah. We've never done it. We talked about it. But
I
we
had
had that.
I had a decrease that maybe less
Well,
and maybe not even.
and even on the phone, because I can
Well,
recall.
yesterday, we were playing, I can't remember who we're sitting right over there. We were playing with them, and the lady bid the spade, and the other lady
After enough time.
yeah,
Okay.
and the other lady had forgotten, and she jumped straight to 4 spades,
There you go.
and her partner had one spade. Yeah, and then her partner was, oh, it was Jenny that was sitting here, and Jenny was supposed to, she said, I forgot, she had an atrocious game.
I'm sure. Yeah, we run into some of
That's
those miscommunication, all night. Dad, we got 5 trumpets. You know, here we are, and here there's a young bee.
But that was the only time I've seen it done, and then it was done with tractor. But it was interesting since we were.
And we could have had it and not seen it.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's unbelievable that we had it.
Oh,
right
right
over
over.
it. Well, I'm sure I have lost it. Oh, my head, but maybe else. Well, a lot of people are out of town on this, that, and the other, so.
Oh, okay. Well, I need everything, so.
Well, I did, and I do.
Nothing can be. But, oh, thank you. But with this heat, I can't be in the yard. And if I was at home, I'd be wanting to be in the yard. And
It's too hot to be in the yard.
it is. I just got killed myself one day and I said, no, I don't need to be doing this.
What are you doing? What are you doing up there in this heat?
Well, see, I've just been in the house a year and a half, and it's an old house, and the yard has been neglected for a long, long time, so I'm doing everything. Probably more hot, but that's okay.
Took one home with you.
Yeah. Well, use them as fans.
This convention
Yeah, honestly.
didn't sound like the most exciting thing.
Nah, trust me, a lot of people, I've heard that. And I mean, the main thing is, this is for people who either want to play competitively or who want to get why you're doing this. And it's not really as much as that, like, there are little parts of it that are interesting, but it's not exactly the same thing as playing the cards. But it's still important to know because
Well, you've got 3 new people here that are here so far, so like, this is the first time we've filled out a convention card, maybe Mary knows more than.
that's about what I expect.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
So be slow.
Yeah. Don't worry. You guys are right there where you're supposed to be. And the reason that I chose to do this was because you get people who are new. If you ever walk into a tournament or if you play at a club game, you're supposed to have something filled out, so that it's required of you, it's your responsibility, but also knowing some of this stuff will make you feel a lot better whenever the director gets called to your table or whenever you have opponents that are kind of particular and asking questions, because those are the kinds of people that scare new beginners away.
Absolutely they are.
And so there are really 2 things that we can do to counteract this. We can educate our beginners, or we can get rid of the people who suck. And because people aren't getting rid of the people who suck, we're doing the other thing. So
He just heard me talking about when we first started. I mean, I knew nothing. You could walk over here just ready to play, and oh my gosh, we played. It was awful. I lived with this awful, mean person. Mean. It was
They kept
terrible.
calling the director.
She kept calling the director, and she kept making snide remarks. Oh, I'm so nervous. She said, well, I can tell you are. I mean, she was just nasty. I thought if I could ever get out of here, I will just. And I reneged. I was so nervous that I just was doing it.
Yeah.
Anyhow, the most wonderful thing, she moved away. So I didn't have to learn.
Did you have a party?
That was wonderful.
that's always the best thing whenever they disappear.
She moved to a different town. How lucky was that?
And unlucky for wherever she went.
Let's see. She might
Okay, everybody.
Oh,
Only person I
that's
ever
why.
learned.
So.
And when they said, oh, you can play in the train. Oh, you know, I'll go
Oh,
down.
yeah, they all said.
Well, I went down, and then they didn't have enough to be in the beginner thing, and they moved us into the elite or mid or something, and the people that were there didn't realize they were movies, I mean, really movies. And one of them says, I'm calling the director, and they'll probably take 2 points from you. I went, well, let's see them try, because I don't have any points. And then she kind of calmed down after that. I thought, okay.
Yeah, you get a lot of people, especially when you play at higher levels. They're really competitive, and they are very like.
They're light.
It's like they live by the law just of the words, and they don't they don't get the spirit of how things are supposed to be going about. That's a nice way to say it. There are simpler ways to say it that aren't as nice. But,
We're thinking them. Okay.
right, exactly. As long as we're all on the same page is what's important. So, but yeah, so the main thing is just getting you guys comfortable with some things that will come up regularly. I want to start by talking about convention cards because you need to have 2 filled out wherever you play.
2.
Yes, 2. 1 for each partner.
Oh.
Right? It seems kind of dumb, and, it's mainly so that it helps to reinforce this idea that one partner is not doing something different than the other. It's supposed to... Right, exactly. That's kind of the idea there. I'm not saying it works every time, because sometimes our partners do really idiotic things, regardless of what's on that card, but, sometimes you just can't help it, right? So I'm going to show a picture up here in a second, but, I mentioned this a second ago. The reason you need to have convention cards, a lot of people like to make the analogy that it's like the Rosetta Stone of your game. That little card you're holding there helps everybody else understand how you communicate with your partner. So, and it's important to keep in mind that it's really more of a summary than it is a complete detailed thing, because bidding can become so complicated. There are so many permutations of auctions. You're not going to get everything down one card, but if you give people the gist of what happens 80% of the time, you're not going to get a lot of quabbling over that. So that's why they exist. Does that kind of make sense? That's their purpose. We want to create transparency because bridge is a game of as much complete information as we really can. There aren't any secrets. Okay. Kind of the same idea with some of the laws we'll talk about today, but that'll be a little bit later. The rules and the reason that we have directors coming about and, making some of these decisions that are good for some people and against others is to restore equity. If you revoke, you're not going to get punished if the director comes over. The director's just trying to see, okay, so even though you've done something kind of silly, is there a way to kind of restore the result had you not done this? Does that kind of make sense? A lot of beginners get intimidated when they see the director because they think this is like, football referee coming over and giving you a yellow card. That's not what this is. We're just trying to make sure that we can keep the result as close to as possible as had the infraction not occurred. Yeah, we want to keep a fair competition, and perhaps the best way to get this idea into your head is that if you were to play against somebody and they revoked against you and they got a top board based off of that revoke, we're trying to minimize situations like that as much as we can. Sometimes it's not completely possible, but we do what we can. So, are there any questions on this idea? That's like that's the theme for today. We're trying to keep things fair, and this is how we do it. Okay?
Pay for any time the director comes over, though, usually, don't you? Most times. I mean, it's going to cost you a penalty of some sort.
Not necessarily, and we might see a little bit of that today. And again, the idea is to restore equity. So, if you're in a situation where you made a mistake, but it doesn't really affect anything, most of the time nothing really happens. They come over, they look at everything, and they say, okay, it's like if a cop pulled you over for speeding like 5 over. He might say, well, just, be careful, don't do it again.
Okay.
Sometimes, though, there has to be some sort of restitution. We'll get into those examples in a second. Because it's hard to kind of enumerate all the different situations. But I want to look at the picture of the convention card up here. Yours will not look identical, but it has all the same stuff on it. Okay? So if you guys want to look at your convention cards while I go to the next slide. Like I said, this is a summary of your methods. We're not listing everything. But I want to clarify some of the little codifying that goes on within the cards, because it's real compact, and that's part of why it's so confusing. So, you got all these different colors, right, on your convention card. There's blue, there's red, and there's black. And all those colors mean, they help to remind you what things you need to do something about whenever it occurs in your auction. So, for example, do you guys play any sort of conventions? Okay, so a lot of those conventions are what we call alertable, and that means you have little alert cards in the box. Whenever this convention is used at the table, you put out this card to let people know, hey, this is something that's kind of unusual. Okay, does that make sense? That's the purpose of this. That's why all the stuff in red on the card is alertable. Okay. So what's the convention that you play?
Transfers and statement, and I'm learning puppet statement. Most people are.
Okay. So if you're learning puppet statement, this is a pretty good example. So, what would happen is you would have somebody open a no trump or 2 no trump, right? And then you bid 3 clubs. Now we'll get into some specifics perhaps later with some questions, but your partner's response to that. That's when this is kind of unusual. You put up the card and say alert. Does that make sense? That's the idea. You're letting them know.
The 3 clubs, you say alert?
Whenever they put down the 3 diamonds here. We'll get into some specifics later, but just understanding that the use of this convention requires that you let people know, hey, by the way, you need to.
Partner who puts it out?
It's the partner of the person's bid who's alertable. So if you make the bid that's alertable, you don't alert it yourself because your partner might forget. And your opponents are entitled to the idea that, maybe your side doesn't have quite the concentration or hasn't had enough coffee that day, and because this is a game of concentration as well. And so if you can profit by making sure your opponents are asleep, you're entitled to that. So does that kind of make sense? So
Do you have to use the card and not use your mouth to say alert?
I tell everybody to use the card in their mouth because what you're trying to do is you really don't want to have any reasons that nobody sees it. So there's a visual cue, there's an auditory cue, and
Oh, somebody says I didn't hear you say that.
Right. You want to kind of protect yourself, and they have the cards here, so you might as well use them.
We've never had anybody ever pull them out.
Really?
No. They all use their mouth here. Alert.
Yeah. As long as the idea gets across, I don't care how you do it, but that's what I do.
Announce, but I don't know.
We're going to talk about that because they're very similar, okay? And so there's a lot of confusion about the difference between the 2 things, and all announcement is you don't pull out the alert card, okay? That's really the only difference. There are 4 things that you announce. That kind of helps make this easy. So all that stuff is in blue. And you guys probably use 3 of the 4 things, if I had to guess. So the 4 things you can announce are the no trump range, which is on the top right. If you look, it's in blue. So let's say I play a 15-17 no trump.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So you guys are already familiar with it whenever. Okay. So same thing with transfers. If you play Jacoby transfers, they'll be at the 2 level. If you play Texas transfers, they'll also be at the 4 level. Okay? Just depends what you use. If you play 2/1 and your 1 no trump response to a major is forcing or semi-forcing, you need to announce that. So I play 2/1 a lot, and so if I had this response, I would have to say forcing, or if I played semi-forcing, semi-forcing. Okay.
That's over our heads.
Okay, that's fine. If you don't play it, you don't need to worry about it. But understand that when people are using this, that's what they will do. That's why it's in blue on the card. So if you're playing like Standard American or something, you can disregard that. It's not a forcing response for you, so you don't need to notify your opponents, right? It's all just, it sounds like a bunch of hogwash rules, but there's really purpose to this. It's that most people, it used to be play Standard American, and so because this is so different from that, the idea is that we should be letting people know, hey, by the way, this is not what you're expecting. Are you guys with me so far on this? Okay, are there any questions about the announcements? The only other thing that you'll announce, and you may or may not use it, I see some beginners do it, if you open like a club with 2, or you open a diamond with 2, you would announce that as well. Okay, that's decent practice. So again, you don't do it, don't worry about it, but know that there will be people you encounter who will do that, and whenever they say something, that's what they're doing. Okay. So does that much make sense? And really, you see a lot of the card, about half of it is in red, and that's because people play so many different conventions that require these alerts. It kind of helps you understand where to put things, and whenever you see it on the card, it's a cue for you to know to alert it. So, I want to walk through this with you guys. And we're going to kind of fill out a card together, okay? We're going to try to at least. If I can't do it up here, I'll just do it try to get this going. If it doesn't, then we'll try to. Because it really is, I mean, that's what confuses most people, is just the overwhelming amount of stuff. But it's all kind of categorized into sections. And so, if it looks strange to you, you probably don't play it, and you don't need to worry about it. You know, that's the short answer to a lot of this. Okay. So,
Just leave it blank if you don't play it. You only check
Yeah.
the things you play.
so you guys play Standard American, right?
Right.
Okay, so you don't play 2-over-1 game forcing, right? And you don't play game forcing when the suit's so don't worry about it. This little box here, it's called General Approach. You would probably write something like Standard American. Okay,
And
let me
you see
scan right
the words around our sheet, so we just check it.
Yeah, you got this little line right here. And there's a lot of those, like you can see there's some down here too. But those will be helpful for you whenever you need to add in stuff that might not otherwise
We
be
have a card that
transparent.
doesn't have Standard American already.
Card has-
Right, yeah. If you got a checkbox for it, you check the box. I think those Bridge Buddy ones have a box for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're a little bit, they're a little messier than this version, but they're a lot more, they have a little more options for you to check, which is nice. So, if you do any kind of light openings, or if you play any kind of light third hand openings, or your preamps are kind of then you can check one of the boxes here. I check all 4 because I've done everything, so I would do something like this. You guys may or may not do that. I'm guessing you probably are pretty sound with your preamps, like 2 of the top 3 honors type of thing. Okay, so you wouldn't have to worry about that.
Yeah, less than 10 points, and you got 2 of the top 3 honors.
Right,
When they keep yelling to us, 5-10-2, 5-10-2, Dave.
right. Okay, yeah, so you wouldn't have to worry about that.
But do we check that as a preempt or no?
No, because this is for whenever you do something that's
Very loud, goes
abnormal.
with that.
So like, I will open 2 spades on Queen 6 and nothing else all the time. So I need to check this box.
No, we don't know anything about
Okay. That's basically the gist of this stuff here. You since you're playing standard, the only forcing opening you're going to check is 2 clubs, right? Because that's all your game forcing hands. That's all that little box means. People who play like precision things where they use a strong 1 club, they would check this box instead. But you don't do it, you don't need to worry about it. Other people do. Okay. So that makes sense,
But we do check the 2 club.
right? Because that's
it.
what you
That's
do.
our strong.
Okay.
And the rest of the convention part really goes a lot like this. You know, I mean, there's often a cue here, and you either play it or you don't. So
Okay, I see.
whenever there's a line, you fill it out as appropriate. So you guys play at 15 to 17 no trump.
Yeah.
You got a line here. It says no trump. So that's your cue, 15 to 17. All right. Where do you guys think you're going to check off your transfers?
Jacoby, we do Jacoby. Transfer for sure.
Okay, so how do you mark that on the sheet then?
Yeah, just put an X in the box.
Right, exactly. You check this one and this
We're in
one.
the 5 thing. The blue, and then, way over here.
Yeah, we're on the right-hand side at the top. Yeah.
Transfer responses, we check Jacoby.
I'm thinking
Right.
we should learn that Texas, because everybody seems to be talking about it, but we've never really.
And that's where you go to 4.
It's same thing, just you've been in the 4 level.
So if we're kind of sort of,
We might mention it here in a little bit because I mean this is a nice small group and we can kind of get off on some tangents without going overboard.
We should know it, probably.
It's worth looking at. I mean, you need to understand some of the inferences to kind of be useful, but we'll get to that in a little bit. These other lines here, some people play some kind of minor suit statement or transfers. You just write in whatever your description is by the bit. So, for example, most of the people I play with, I play 4-way transfers, which means that if I want to show clubs, I did 2 spades. So I might do something like draw an arrow and then draw a club symbol. Or say transfer to clubs or something. As long as you get across the idea, nobody really cares. As long as they can understand it. Same thing with 2 no trump. I use it as a transfer to diamonds, so, diamonds.
And that's what we do. Do we do the forcing statement? Yeah. We say the 2 clubs as a response.
Yeah, that's this
forcing,
box
is
here.
that- no.
There's just a statement box if you look on there.
Oh, up above it, I see.
Yeah, and like I said earlier, if you don't play it, if you don't recognize it, you probably don't use it. Forcing statement happens to be under 2 diamonds, and it's for people who it's a 2-way statement convention. You're not going to see it a whole lot anymore because you're not going to. Just take my word for it.
So I am really glad we're going over. Why do we don't know how to fill this thing in?
Well, where is it? Let's see, where is the
Regular
stuff?
standard is right up here.
Oh, okay, so
Right.
you check that.
That's kind of it. You just kind of have to scan through and go row by row. And a lot of the stuff you're going to end up leaving blank only because you don't use a whole bunch, which is good. It makes your life easier.
And then if I do puppet, I would check puppet.
Right. This is puppet for 2 clubs. Again, notice it's by the 2 club. If
Oh, two
if you
clubs,
play
I don't do that.
right. So let me ask you this: based on our discussion, if you play puppet as 3 clubs, where do you think you're going to fill that out? If you're looking at your card.
Is it under forcing?
Well, where's it 3, it's 3 club,
Right.
well, I'm looking for 3 clubs,
It's in the same section where you're looking for the right thing. I just want you to get into the.
Well, there's a 3 club up here right next to the
Right, that's
15
exactly.
and 17.
Right, that's exactly where you put it. I usually write
Oh,
puppet,
right here,
3
club puppet.
yeah, like puppet, game forcing,
We need to learn that.
something on those lines.
Okay, well, I would never guess that, okay.
And again, the idea is just that you have these little, lines by the bids you make. Those are all responses.
Fill this out on your potential market, right?
Well, that's
It
what
says
I
2
would've-
clubs.
yeah, that's-
We were just showing up there, we marked it over
I
there.
would have done it wrong.
And so, are there any questions on anything else here? Most of the rest of it you won't have to worry about. But if you're curious, let me know. That's why we're here. So.
What about that, what we were talking about, the 2-spade bid for the minor suit, that's not on there, that just comes under Jacoby transfer, it's just part of that?
Yeah, so again, it's the same thinking when we were looking at puppets. So, if this is a response to the one entrant opening, right? So it's going to be in this section.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? So now you're just looking for whatever bid you're using for that. So I would find the 2-spade bid and then write whatever is appropriate. So if that's a transfer for you, you could write, transfer to
2
clubs.
clubs, okay.
Or something like that. The more you do this, the more comfortable you'll feel.
Gosh, you need
Doing
some
it.
room.
Means transfer to a minor suit.
Oh, it's just either one. Okay, so you might say,
We don't know which one at first.
yeah, so I might write something like clubs or diamonds.
Right, girls are different.
Yeah. But now I was playing with someone yesterday that uses the 2 no trump to transfer to diamonds. So you would mark that.
You just write
We're
that
using
next
that.
to
If
that
I
bid.
play with her again, that's what I would.
Right.
That's the second bid in there.
Yeah.
Exactly. Right. And it's kind of the same thing. You can see here, there's a little box for 2 no trump openings. If you do puppet stamen, there's a box. If you do Jacoby, there's a box. And you can write the, 20 to 21 is what most people use. Whatever range you like, just what goes there.
Oh, okay.
And again, there's a line for it. So, if you,
You alert?
no, remember, everything that's alertable is in red.
Oh, minors. Oh,
Right.
I don't think we do what you mean from
no.
Okay, now, and the rest of this stuff you probably either don't have a definition for or you don't use. At some point in time, you will be checking this box here, this box here, this box here. But don't worry about it, because like I said, if you don't use it, who cares? Okay, so does that make sense? So these 2 boxes are your major and minor suit openings. What you're looking for in describing these sections is kind of like, how long of a suit do you have to open? If partner makes raises, are they invitational, are they weak? Do you do anything odd otherwise? So you guys play 5-card majors, right?
Mhm.
So instead of checking 4, you check 5 because you promised 5-card majors, and you say it says expected minimum length. These are the seats that you're in. You guys are going to check 5 for both of those
Okay.
because unless you open with 4 cards and like 4th seat or something, which if you do, good for you. If you don't, then you just fill it out appropriately. That's the point of this, is that you can play whatever you want as long as it's on here somehow.
And mainly the point of this is to tell your opponents what you're doing.
Right, exactly. I should be able to look at your card, take 10 seconds, and get a gist of what you're doing. For the most part. I'm not going to understand every single thing you do, but I want to get most of it.
What if you made a mistake? Like you say you marked 5 and then you ended up, you did a major opening with 4. Is that a penalty, or can they say anything about that? Or
So, let's say-
director or anything?
Let's say it's marked like this, and you have a hand where this becomes an issue. Let's say that you're a defender, and the declarer plays you for a hand that you don't have. So, it is the responsibility of each player to ask whenever there's any kind of doubt about what to do. So, and I'll look this up and make a more formal answer, maybe in an email, but the gist of what I'm telling you is that if I'm called to your table and you say, we made a mistake filling out the card, we had this issue, I would be looking at the player who was, thinking you're at fault and tell them so. You ask them what this bid means, and if they say no, the onus of, is on them because, you should be asking, right? So, but that's a good question because people are afraid if they make a mistake that, I guess turned off. If you make a mistake that's going to negatively affect you, not necessarily. You just have to have a, half reasonable director. Well, that's weird. Maybe it's just frozen. Okay, but if you, all this is here, the double raise, which would be not the 2 level, but the 3 level, because it's 2 levels higher. This little row asks whether that's invitational, weak, or forcing, right? And I'm guessing you guys played as invitational. Does that sound right? It's like 1 heart, 3 hearts is invitational.
Go to games.
So you would check the invitational box.
Oh, okay.
Right? And so under that, it says after overcall. So if your opponent overcalls and your partner makes the same bid, what they're asking is that still invitational or is it something else? You may or may not play it as either invitational or weak. And depending on what you do, you would check those. So, for example, maybe it will, it's more today.
Come on.
So if it went like a heart, they overcall a spade, and now your partner bids 3 hearts, is that still invitational or is it something else? That's what you have to assign in that box. So what do you guys play that as?
There's an overcaller in between your bid, is that what you're saying?
Yes.
I would think it's still
Invitational. I think they jumped to your bid.
Yeah, so you would check the invitational box.
I mean, I think that's what we do. If I jump you to 3 over 1, I would think that's a strong hand. Keep
Right.
going.
I'm not telling you that one way is right or wrong. I'm just
Right,
saying,
just what you do.
whatever you do,
And
that's
they agree.
safe.
And the overcaller doesn't seem to make any difference. Is that all right?
Yeah, that's fine. As long as you and your partner on the same page, I don't care what you do. If this was a class about bidding, we would get into some discussion about that. But I just want to make sure that whatever you do, you can fill out in this so other people know. Because some people won't do that, a significant majority, and you need to have that distinction so they can look at it and say, oh, okay, this is what they do. So if you look a little bit further down there, you see all this stuff about conventional raises. If you played like Jacoby 2 no trump or splinters, you just check those boxes. That's all that is. If you did something else that was weird, you would write something down that little line on the bottom that says other. And those are actually my favorite parts about the card because there's some room for creativity in how you go about filling that out. So like if I play some kind of weird method, I can just write down a little, sentence blurb quickly explaining what that is. So like, I play Jacoby 2 no trump, so I would check this box. I play splinters, and I might write something like, you know, let's say I played 2 clubs, something where like just any game forcing hand. I might do something like 2 clubs, any game force. Alright. So just to illustrate, like if you do decide to do something weird, or if you don't know how else to explain what you're checking off, you can always write it down on the bottom and you know, kind of cover yourself. So right now you guys have something that looks like this. Does that make sense? Or any other questions on this? Minor suits, same thing.
And are you gonna go over what's in blue down there, 1 no trump, 14 or?
Yeah, we kind of mentioned this earlier when we talked about announcements, but you don't need to worry about this. If you play 1 no trump response to your major opening is forcing, you announce that and you check this box. But you guys don't, so.
You don't.
Right.
Okay.
Right. So, you know, and there's other space here, but it's not super important. It's just like, if you respond 3 no trump, how many points does that show? You know, you might write something like 13 to 15 if that's what your range is, you know. If you haven't discussed it, don't put it in there because you haven't discussed it, right? So, again, don't worry about what you don't know or you don't play, right? You know, if you play Drury, which you may or may not have heard of, you would check those boxes, right? And minor suits is going to be the exact same kind of idea. You know, what's the minimum expected length for your opening? You know, do you always have 4 diamonds when you open a diamond? You know, you sometimes have 3. This is where you need to check those boxes. You'll probably be checking these. Let me see why is it doing this. It's done this like twice. Maybe I'm too close to the board or something. And, you know, if it goes a diamond and your partner bids 3 diamonds, is that invitational or is that weak? That's what this box asks. Again, exactly like the box over here. So do you guys play that as invitational or do you play it as weak or?
I don't know.
Okay, do you have an agreement? You might not have an agreement about it. Okay, so you just leave it blank. You know?
What do you think we should do?
Most people at that level would probably play it as invitational because it's the same thinking as over here where, you know,
You have so many cards in there, how many points and all that.
right, exactly.
And you know you need a lot more than you have in the major suit because your partner that bid it is going to have less probably.
Yeah, exactly. You need to have a little bit, I mean, like 10 to 12 is about normal for invitational bids, you know, so.
But I mean number of supposed trump cards.
Yeah, so like if partner opens a diamond, you should probably have 4 trumps. If partner opens a club, you're supposed to have like 5, but, you know.
Mhm. Okay.
Yeah, that's a different discussion for
If you
another
have
day.
4 major, you should do that over raising them in your minor.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's,
Okay.
and that's mainly just because it gives you a couple ways to win. We might talk about that here in a second, actually. And so the other stuff down there works the same way. You know, whenever you respond to no trump to a club, you know, how many points does that show? That's why there's a little box here. You know, same for 2 no trumps, same for 3 no trumps. So what do you guys use for your ranges for those 3 bids?
Where are we now? We're slow here.
Oh, you're good. Just we're down here now, and what we're looking to see is whenever you respond different numbers of no trump to your partner's minor opening, how many points does that show? That's what that little section asks. Okay.
Say 1 no trump is a weak bid.
Okay. So if you play 6 to 9, and your
Let's see.
screen works, you put down 6 to 9.
When they respond to your bid,
Oh, you bid a no trump and they say 1 club?
no, you respond. Are you saying we respond? No.
Yeah. This is yeah. Yeah. So like a club pass. A no trump.
1 no trump. Oh, okay, that would be weak.
We,
So like 6 to 9s. Okay.
Yeah.
imagine this is a 9. If you bid 2 no trump instead, what does that show?
10 to 12?
Okay, so 10, 12. And notice there's a little box here that says invitational. I would check that too. Just to, clarify that. Right, it says passive. And then 3 no trump, you use the same idea. Does that all make sense though?
Yeah, it's a good review for us.
Yeah, that's the other reason I like writing down the ranges, because a lot of people just describe like it's weak, and that's not really.
You need to point out.
Yeah, you really do, because otherwise you don't get the full appreciation of what's going on, right? So with all that section filled out, we're gonna look at the bottom now. These are all openings. This is all. You might have noticed that this is all kind of constructive bidding. This is you and your partner doing all the bidding. That's the right-hand side. So. I think that you guys opened 2 clubs to show some kind of strong hand, right?
Yes.
So you check the little box that says strong.
Okay.
Do you need at least how many points to open 2 clubs? 22? Okay, so 22.
Plus.
Yeah, 22 plus, 22 37, 22 infinity. I don't care. As long as you get the gist of what needs to, be there, you're fine. Now, the stuff at the bottom here, this is the little RESP, is short for response. So do you play a 2-diamond response as weighting or negative or something else? That's what that asks.
Where is it now?
It's right here under where we checked off strong.
Okay, yeah, response.
And what if you do steps?
If you do steps, you might write on the side, you might write what your 2-diamond step means. You might say it's 0 to 3 points.
We call it,
But I'm just not on stop.
So if you play steps, you might write something in there. A lot of people will write the name of what they play, and it's not quite okay because people have different interpretations about the same name. And just to give you an example, so some people play something called Bergen races, okay? And what happens is part opens a major, and you can bid 3 of a minor artificially to show a raise. Now, there's different ways you can play the different minor suit bids. So, if you just write down Bergen, it wouldn't be adequate because there's different variations in that. So,
Or somebody might not even know what Bergen is.
right, exactly. So make sure that
Yeah.
sometimes you don't have the space for it, but just if you can, be a little bit more complete. If you play 2-diamond responses 0 to 3 high card points, write that. It takes an extra second. Right, so.
And if you wrote the response bids, you just write it out where it says response bids and has the lines.
Yeah. So write you can write that over here in the response read this section.
Okay. I'll put write out steps.
All the stuff under here. These are all your 2-diamond, 202 spade openings. You probably played this as weak 2s. Does that sound right?
Yes.
So you're just going to check the box that says weak for each of those. And you're also going to write point range. Most people play something like 6 to 10 is what they fill out.
Is that fewer than 10, we usually say, don't we?
Yeah. So
Preempt.
a great exercise for your partnership is to kind of deal out some hands and say, okay, I'm going to try this because the board is being awfully ridiculous. But yeah, it's not going to work. So if you had Queen 6 to the suit, would you open that with a preempt? Right? No. So then, if you had Queen Jack and the suit, nothing else, like just that 3 count, would you open
3
that with a
cards?
preempt? No, just 3 high card points.
You've got Queen Jack,
But
and
you have
nothing
6
else.
cards, 6 cards.
I'm hoping that this actually, I don't know why it's being so persnickety. Let's say your hand was something like this. These are your only points. Would you open this hand? Right? And so you kind of go, right, exactly. You make this, you kind of keep going up until you're kind of like, yeah, I would do this, and that's your minimum. So most people play 6 to 10.
Usually it's 6 at least.
Yeah. And you kind of add a king with that, right? So, you know, mark those, 6 to 10. Open here than what's on the board. Because God forbid that technology works the way it's supposed to. If you, most people play that a two-note trump response to a preempt is forcing, and you either get a feature out of your partner or a suit or whatever. You would write that kind of stuff under the response and rebid section for your opening. So let's say that after 2 spades, I can bid two-note trump as a forcing bid. We check this off. Right. If you play something like feature, you could write feature under here, or after two-note trump partner shows a king, or whatever you decide to do. So, does that kind of make sense?
Makes sense.
We've had that.
That's fine. And again, it's like I said earlier. If you don't do it or you're not comfortable doing it, you don't have an agreement. Don't worry about writing it down. You might even go as far to write down no agreement. It sounds silly, but you get people who thank you for it, right? So we'll come to this at the end because this is kind of that's a nice section. So does all this make sense?
Two-note trump forcing is the response to the weak or to
The week twos.
the weak two.
Notice that like the week 2 bids are here, and these are all in the same kind of row, and they're under this box with all the 2-level openings.
Yeah, but the problem is they got that strong bid up at the very top.
Well, that's fine. These are just all 2-level openings, right?
Right.
By agreement, you know that this one is strong and these 3 are weak, and so you check those as such. But like, if you kind of go over to the corresponding box in the row, those are where those go.
But two-note trump is not anything you say to club strong.
Right, and so you wouldn't put anything on this little box here because this
You gotta
is
get this in your head though.
yeah. So does that kind of make sense though? Just to this, you can have the boxes that are close to each other are usually associated in some way. So, down here, left and right sides are kind of owned by this bid. The columns are labeled, so you can put information there. You can put response and rebid information there, that sort of thing. And the more you do this, the more you're comfortable with it. By the end of the day, you'll have a filled out card you can always reference too. So that's the other nice thing about showing up.
All right, just review. This is the basic thing.
Yeah.
When you make that preempt bid, that low, weak king bid, you either are the opener or the overcaller, right?
Right.
And
this is just for being the opener, right? Because this is all of our opening and constructive stuff.
not the opener between you and your partner.
Right, between you and your partner alone.
But if you're, yeah.
We'll get to that in a second, because that's a good question. Because it's like you can do the same thing, but you're in a different seat, so there's a different box for it, right? All this stuff is for whenever you're doing that overcalling, or if you're responding to an overcall. I call it advancing. Okay, you'll hear that a lot the more you play. You'll say, "Well, advancer did this." And that's
Yeah,
what
you
it is. So, if you play takeout doubles, it's one of the few things you don't have to mark down because everybody plays takeout doubles. Okay, you can write it down in a little line though if you feel like doing it. Nobody's gonna punish you for it. Okay. This is broken to the top left. Broken to the top left. It says special doubles.
Special, ours is simple overcalls at the top.
Doesn't
Yeah.
yours might be slightly
Oh,
different.
special
Here's the box.
doubles is third one now.
Oh, okay.
Okay, you guys do that. Yeah. See, there's no consistency in the way that things are like.
Okay.
In general, there's some general consistencies, but stuff like it's all there. It's just not quite the same place.
Yeah.
But yeah. So if you play takeout doubles, good. If you play something like negative doubles, you may have heard of or play. You would check this and you would describe how high you play them. So, does anybody, any of you three play negative doubles?
Heard of it, but
I've heard of it.
Okay, if you've heard of it, don't worry about it.
Well,
It's essentially,
where's the word takeout?
well, like I said earlier, takeout doubles are used by basically everybody, so there really isn't a checkbox for it.
Oh, okay, we don't have to check
It's not-
that.
But if you
special
wanted,
double.
if you wanted to write them down, you just can write them down on the line. That's true of anything that you play that you don't see a box.
Everybody plays it, we don't agree.
Right, exactly.
We thought we were so special when we did that.
Well, I hardly ever do.
No wonder we play it, it's very common.
Well, you say that though. I played in Dalton several months ago, and they play their doubles as like just anything goes. Like sometimes they'll have 6 trumps in your suit. Sometimes they'll have a true takeout double. You know, they just kind of throw it in there and make you guess. So, you know, it'd be wrong to say that everybody is special because then nobody is. You know what I mean? So, but that aside, so these are our simple overcalls. That just means, you know, overcalling at like the cheapest possible level. So usually the 1 level. They even, you know, have here 1 level. So you just write how many points you normally have, right? If you overcall on really crappy suits, or if you overcall on 4 cards, you check those boxes. Most people do something like, you know,
We have 10 points.
you do 10 up to about, what, 17 or 18. That's when you start doubling and then going about bidding your suit. You may not have talked about that, just you might write 10 plus then. So like if they open a diamond and you overcall a spade, how many points can you have for that bid? That's what that little section is asking.
You have to have 10
6
points.
to 10.
6 to 10? Okay, so if you do 6 to 10,
If you're at the 1 level?
yeah, get the 1 level, yeah.
Yeah. Is that
No,
right?
no, overcall you have to have 10 points. Do 5 of a thing and 2 honors. That's the simple overcall. That's the 10-5 too, right?
If that's what you guys are using, then that's what you can write down. I happen to overcall very light, and for a lot of good reasons. But you know, that's a good standard to have. Is 10 plus, with some kind of decency.
We're not doing nothing conceptuals. We gotta start.
Right, and that's the point. Is I don't want to talk too much about the specifics of what you're playing, just as much as this is how you show it. So if that's what you do, that's what you do.
Right, and if you had 4 of a major, we're not supposed to be overcalling because we might be robbing our partner of their bid.
Right, you may be inclined to either maybe take out double or pass and wait and see. It just kind of depends on the hand, right? So here you have responses, and they ask whether if you bid a new suit, is it forcing or non-forcing constructive. All this here means, it's kind of a weird term because like there's 2 non-forcings, but this just means you can't have garbage for making your bid. The easy way to illustrate this, so let's say that, I'm going to try to erase this, that's not like a PM. Let's say that they open a diamond, your partner bids a heart, and now you bid 2 clubs, okay? So if you play 2 clubs as non-forcing, you can bid this on like an 8 count with, 6 okay clubs. You're just trying to, escape. If you play it non-forcing constructive, you're going to have more than this, Probably just short of an opening hand, up to about an opening hand would be normal for this. If you play it forcing, opening hand plus is probably about right. So, just depending what your agreements are, you would check that box. And if you don't have the agreement, guess what?
You don't check it.
Right, you don't check it. They asked about jump raises, so it's kind of like the double raise over here. So, in this example, if we responded to 3 hearts instead of just 2, what does that show in terms of points? Is it invitational? Is it weak? You can check the appropriate points.
Invitational.
Okay, that's what you would check.
And points for that, we think we have 11, 12 or something like that, or more. We should have 4. It's a jump rate. We should have 10 plus.
Good 9 up to really bad 12. I mean, it just, and again, it just depends on how light you overcall. You guys overcall a little heavier than I'm accustomed to, as a base. So you can probably do it with, like kind of what I said, because if you have an opening hand, you're probably more inclined to just get the game just because your threshold's so close, but to having another opening hand across from you. So just a little bit under that is about like the 9 and 12.
If you hit the 13, should you take it right to game
Yeah, I generally would.
yourself?
So, are there any questions about that? Jump over calls, this is what you were asking about earlier. If instead in this example, if they open a diamond, you bid 2 hearts rather than 1, is that weak or not? For you guys, it sounds like it is. So you just mark the weak. If you do something unusual, like some people play that those show 2 suits, you would write something about that here, but you don't have to worry about that. That's really all you have to do for that section. This little thing here, it looks out of place because it says opening preempts and we're on this other side, but it's because these 3 and 4 level bids are so kind of obstructive, that's kind of why they're over here. So they're just looking to see, do you bid preempts at the 3 levels soundly, like with a good suit and values, or do you kind of fudge it a little bit? I'm guessing you guys probably require like 2 of the top 3 honors and the same points, so you would pick sound.
And more points.
Yeah. So that would be what you do there.
Except you have to have 7 cards to do 3, and 8 to do 4.
Exactly. Do you guys play Michaels?
We've had it, but we aren't good
I
enough
hardly
to
ever
put it in.
play it.
That's okay. So when you get comfortable with it, you check it here, and it says Michaels in case you forget.
Let's see, what's that in?
This is under direct cubic, because that's what Michaels is
I've
cubic.
just barely gotten the natural, where you bid the partners, your opponent's suit.
Yeah. Yeah, and let's say you played that, because that comes up sometimes, like, if they open the diamond, you did 2 diamonds. Some people play that shows diamonds. You shouldn't. But if you do, you would just check this. Notice it's in red. Okay?
Which means alert.
Right, so if it does come up, you need to alert it. Okay?
I'm gonna put a question about that in the machine. Yeah.
What kind of blackwood do you guys use?
Now, you knew it the other day,
Yeah.
1430, whatever.
Yeah,
the heck it
1430.
is. Yes, key cards.
Key card.
Okay.
But we
I'm just learning
like
it.
to know it.
Okay, so,
We know regular blackwood, or no drum deal.
Yeah. So if you play normal blackwood, you just check blackwood, okay? And when you play or learn key card, you can choose from the 2 types and you check that appropriate box. If you play 1430, you just check this one over here on the extreme right. Okay.
On our card, it's.
It might be in a different spot on your card, but
Does
it's
it say RKC?
Yeah, that's what the Roman key card.
Is it this one right here?
Yeah, that's 1430. So that's the response structure you use. That's what you would check. Does that make sense so far?
Yeah.
And do people play all those different conventions in Blackwood? They run into all of those?
Yeah, they do. And if you're looking at any one particular convention, you're not going to see it pop up very frequently because the probability of having such a hand and being in such a position on that hand to do it is relatively small. But collectively, using all these things, they come up quite a bit. So, it seems a little counterintuitive to learn a lot of these methods, but at some point, if you're taught well, you'll get why you're using them, and it makes more sense because it's a more natural feel.
Well, if you were beginners, would you suggest you go to one and really get good at it? And which one is that? Or would you, we know the easy one seems like Blackwood, but should we eliminate that and go
You
right
shouldn't worry about slam bidding for a while, but knowing normal Blackwood would be acceptable. Because you just need something to be able to, when you're in that situation, do a quick check and make sure you're not off 2 aces. That's what that's for.
Yeah. And you realize we've got 30 points or something.
Right, exactly. So that's kind of a nice tool to make sure you don't go too high before it's too late. But as beginners, I would suggest that you find a partner you can play with consistently and you make agreements with that partner. A lot of times you get beginners who kind of bounce around from expert to expert, learning different things. And it's great for your card play, but it's terrible for your bidding because there is only some consistency among experts as to what things they use. And this is what I hate about some of the people who try to teach beginners is that they try to ram all these conventions down your throats. Like Puppet Stamen, you guys shouldn't really be caring about Puppet Stamen for about another 2 years. It's just not worth it.
It's so good to hear. I'm gonna write that down. Tell them you said it.
You know, it's like you need to understand things like this before you go on to doing that. You'll win more points that way in the long run. But that's
Play the basic game.
right. Yeah, basically. So, if you play Gerber, check it. You don't need to, but if you do, go ahead. Let's see. I want to go back to the top here. Unless there are any questions about over here. So, no trump overcalls. Like it sounds. When you overcall no trump, how many points do you have? You write it in a little row again.
Can that be just the same as your overcall on a suit?
Help me understand what you're saying. I'm not sure I'm following.
Overcall for thing looking for the 10 points. Is that still acceptable if you're going over a one no trump from your opponent?
Oh, well, this section is about actually overcalling a no trump yourself.
You're saying
Right.
So 15 to 17.
You're looking at this section, which the answer would be yes. You know, 10 is fine. You just need to have distribution.
Oh, this is you.
Right. Yeah. That's a good question because it's easy to mix those up. And, you know, you'll notice that the sections look a little different because you have different options, right? So this section where you're actually overcalling a no trump yourself, you're probably going to have close to the same values you'd open. So I fudge a little bit. I say something like 14 to 18, okay? You probably want to do something just kind of the way you open, like 15 to 17, you know, because it doesn't really make a difference.
So we can just put the same thing.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, and if you use the same systems, there's this little box here that says systems on. Just check that, because that's what you're probably going to be using.
Yeah.
Have you guys ever talked about balancing?
Yes,
we talked about
We
it.
had lessons on all this. We did.
Okay. So, just to give you a hint, because this is kind of important, when you make a balancing overcall, all these requirements get bumped down about a king. And I say about because, you know, it's all sort of fuzzy in the balancing seat. I put down 10 to 16. You might put down something like literally a king. You might say like 12 to 15. And that would be acceptable.
And that's the third seat.
This is the balancing seat. It's the third seat in the sense that it's like, you know, you're the third person to pass, but you don't pass. I say that only because sometimes people will be opening the third seat and they'll think they're balancing, and it's not the same thing. So
Oh, it's not?
it's not, because there's a difference between pass, God's sakes, to you, and a diamond pass to you. There's a whole world of difference of information in these two auctions.
Because the opponents have been.
Right, does everybody see that?
Pass.
And then it's your turn versus them opening and going pass to you.
You're forcing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
So which one is the balancing you're talking about?
This is balancing. Whenever you're balancing, somebody else has bid something and you have a decision whether to pass out or balance the auction by bidding something. The British call it protecting, which I like a little bit better because you're kind of protecting the part score.
So what is your scenario one called? Anything?
That's just being in third seat and opening.
And just an opening bid.
Right, because, you know, we talked about, you know, do you open majors like before cards in first or second seat? That's what this kind of is. So you can
You've
imagine.
been doing that wrong.
You can imagine there being.
We're learning all kinds of stuff.
There are 4 people playing, right? So there's north, south, east, and west, and we talk about seats relative to the dealer. So if north deals, and you'll have to forgive me because I'm writing in some kind of strange braille language here on the board, but so if this is dealer, he'd be first, and then the person next is second, and then the next person's third, and the next person's fourth. You know, gibberish aside. But does that make sense? When you hear people mention those seats, it's what they're normally talking about.
So you don't balance after 2 passes. We're always saying, well, I guess I'm balanced after these 2
Well,
passes.
you can't. I'm just saying that, like, in the first example where it went pass, you're not really balancing your openings. And if somebody else has bid, then that's you are balanced,
Gotcha.
right?
Oh, well, that's
So it's back to regular bidding if you have 2 passes in front.
Yeah.
You get me borrowing that king and all that stuff.
Well, no, you can't. I just want you. It's a terminology issue. Your thinking is right. I just don't want you talking about it to somebody and giving you a strange look because they don't understand what you're talking about. All right. We might use that in a second.
okay. So we'll use the wrong word.
But that's all this is. Okay. So, all those kind of balancing, less than the king type of auctions, for the no trump overcall, that's what this kind of is. So, you'll probably just need to fill out, 12 to 15, and don't worry about the rest of it, okay? Now, as you mentioned earlier, if they open the no trump, your defense versus no trump is how you bid or defend, your partial whenever they open. So, if you play some kind of convention, you describe it here. If you don't do anything, you could just write like natural. You might put something about how many cards are required and leave it at that, right? So, do you guys use anything like Landy or Capoletti? Okay, so don't worry about it. You might write natural and just, draw an arrow through it. If your doubles for penalty in that situation, you write penalty. And I write something like, I write like 15 plus penalty just to illustrate. I have to have this many points before I start thinking about doubling, It falls in line with the theme again, where you need to be kind of as clear as possible without, making your handwriting super small.
Yeah, because if they did one no trump and you say double, our partners will say that's a takeout double, aren't they?
It depends on your agreements with your partner. It shouldn't be a takeout double because, what are you taking out, right? There's no suit for you to have a particular shortness in. At least you do a lot of bad contracts. And if you don't believe me, try it, because
That makes sense.
yeah. But that's a good question, actually, because I've seen people do it a lot, and it's kind of scary.
So basically, if they say one no trump and you have 15 to 17 points, your double is your penalty.
Yeah. So the box under here, and it might be in a different spot on yours, it says over opponent's takeout double. That's what the little T/O means. And the situation this is describing is when your partner opens and they make a takeout double, and you're bidding over the opponent's takeout double. Does that make sense? Try this again, cautiously. One spade, double. Oh, almost did it for me. Imagine there's a double there. We're talking about your next bid. So, if you bid a new suit, is it forcing? And if so, what level? So, in this situation, you'll have a one level forcing bid. But if you bid two clubs, is that forcing or is it not? You would check as appropriate. If you make a jump shift, let's say you bid three clubs, is it invitational? Is it weak? Is it forcing? You check the appropriate box. And this redouble implies no fit is just saying, are you ever going to have a support partner suit when you redouble? I always check this because if I have support, I'm going to raise partner. Right? That's the simplest way to do it. And so that's what I practice. We're in the over opponent's takeout double box, and we're just looking at the redouble section.
Redouble implies no fit.
Yeah. Because if you had a fit, you would raise.
Oh, okay, so if you redouble the double.
Yeah, the redouble classically shows 10 or more points and a willingness to defend. One thing you'll find out is that whenever you don't have a fit for a partner, usually it's right to defend or play some number of no trumps. So I always check that box. You probably should too. And since you guys don't play any of the Jacoby no trumps or anything, all of this is irrelevant, so don't worry about it. Okay. Are there any questions on this section? We're almost done, we're doing pretty good on time too. We're getting some questions into. The box under this is versus opening preempts double is. This is describing whenever they open like two spades or three hearts or whatever. How high can they preempt before your doubles start becoming penalty? When I was a beginner, I was taught four hearts is the cutoff point. Or, you may learn differently, you may agree differently, but you would check takeout, and let's say you play it through four hearts, you would write four hearts. Okay? Whatever you decide to do there. And that's probably all you'll be writing in that section. So you'll see some players have this box here checked. All it means is that whenever they're responding to the double, they use the to no trump response artificially. That's all that means. but you won't have to worry about that. Okay. We're almost done with this. Are there any questions about anything so far? We're doing pretty good. We've gone through 90% of the cards in an hour, so I'm pretty happy with that.
Where's that?
It should be on the left-hand side, kind of in the middle.
Oh, versus opening double is, your partner has doubled their opening preamp.
Right, exactly. So if they open 2 spades and you double, is that takeout? Right? If it is, you kind of keep going with all the different preamps they can make until you say, that's penalty. So like, if they open 4 hearts and you double, is that penalty? You know?
Generally, yes, isn't it?
Yeah, so if you play it that way, you would write it down 4 hearts. That's about where you start making penalty doubles.
Okay, yeah. And then before that, it would be nothing.
Right, that would be all we
And
take
the
out.
partner needs to bid,
Right, exactly.
and the man bid.
Yeah, you're suggesting to your partner that you have the other 3 suits and you want to.
Give me a suit.
Yeah, exactly. They don't have to bid. They can make a penalty pass if they want to, but generally that's what you see is they'll bid something because it's not too often it makes sense to do that. So the only section we haven't covered yet is the leads and defensive parting section, and
Leads, okay.
this is always what I like to fill out first because this is the most important thing on the card.
I'd really like to know more about that. Yeah.
So.
Sure.
Let me ask you guys this. So, what have you guys discussed as far as defensive strategies? Have you talked about like leading sequences or the signaling attitude, count?
Yeah, lots of them. Yeah, we talked about both of those.
Okay, so you're acquainted with what those terms mean, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So, again, agree with your partner on this. I'll tell you what I do, and it makes some sense. My primary signal to partner's lead is attitude. All that means is if partner makes a lead, that's the first thing I'm thinking about. Okay, that's like my default priority. It doesn't mean I have to signal attitude every time he leads. All this is saying is that like that's what I do most of the time. Does that make sense?
Meaning that I like
Or dislike the
your
Right.
lead, come on back.
Right, exactly. That's all that is. Let's see. And as far as the leads here, you see there's versus suits and versus no trump. What they're looking for here is, do you lead any particular card with these kinds of suits? So everybody in the world leads, when they lead sequences, one of those 2 honors, right? And just about everybody leads the top. Notice that they're in bold. Everything that's in bold is what's considered standard leads.
Like in
Okay.
the color, you're in the color?
Yeah, exactly. I think are they in like red or something on yours? Yeah, so with these, okay, they're not kind of purple. So if you're leading something that isn't in purple, you circle it. You guys probably won't have to do much of that. One time I played with a guy and we led the queen from king queen, and I would circle that, right? But you don't have to worry about that. What you do need to discuss with your partners is whenever you have a bunch of like small cards or you have a long suit to an honor, what card you lead. So versus no trump, a lot of people lead 4th best. So you should be, if it's not already marked on here, putting that in there. So from 4 small, if you would lead the 4th best card, circle it. If not, then circle whatever's appropriate.
So that's not the top of nothing, you go to the 4th longest.
No, I'm not saying. I'm just saying if you do that, that's what you should do. A lot of people who are starting out use Boston leads, which is at the bottom of something, top of nothing. And if that's what you do, I mean, you just again circle appropriately. If you lead the top from 5, you would circle the last card.
Top from 5.
It's just that, like, if you look at the versus no trump and you see the 5 X's, what card would you lead from that holding, right?
This one's got the
Or
4.
in the longer.
Okay, so if that's what you would do, just leave it as it is.
Oh,
yeah.
If not,
Some people leave the top of the.
right, and they should have it circled. They're really bad about it in most clubs, so this is why you always need to give yourself personal responsibility to ask, but, different discussion. So does that make sense? This stuff here is just like if you have agreements to lead fourth best, or lead third and fifth best, or lead attitude, you check those boxes. You should probably be checking the fourth best versus no trump. Everything else is kind of up to you guys.
Why do they have all those options on there versus no trump when they tell us lead the fourth from the longest and strongest and no trump?
Because these three methods are the most practiced methods, and so that's why they have boxes. And for example, all attitude leads are is if you have an honor, you lead low, and if you don't have anything, you lead top. There's no significance in which of the small cards you lead. When you lead fourth best, you're leading a specific pip card to get partner to know your length with Rule 11. If you're playing attitude leads, that's irrelevant. You just lead whatever one's the smallest. So, and again, it's a situation where, if you don't use it, don't worry about it. That's what it is, right? So, and people use it enough where it's on the card. So, and again, if it's checking, you don't know what it means to ask. They're not going to, the worst thing that can happen is they can, scoff at you. That's about all they can do, right? So, that's the same kind of thing with this stuff over here. These are all just agreements you can have, and you guys should probably be checking the standard versus suits and no trump. Because as of right now, they don't really teach a whole lot of unusual things, and they really shouldn't either, because
And check both of those?
yeah, because you're not doing anything really unusual. You don't have any weird agreements. Like some experts will play upside down, count and attitude, and they would check those boxes, for example. But
Now, is standard just what we're talking about? You have 2 honors,
that's on this side, and that's all in bold.
and that's all standard.
Yeah.
Top of 2 honors. I mean, basic rules.
Yeah, all those basics are, a lot of this stuff is already highlighted on here, for your convenience, because we're just looking to get a summary. Do you do stuff that most people know, or do you do things that are unusual? Right?
And fourth from the highest in no trump is standard, really, isn't
It
it?
really is, and they have a box on here only because there's so many people out there who, it's really because people are lazy and they don't have an agreement. That's why they have all the other stuff there. Because that's been around since, I think Albert Dormer, or whatever his name is, back in the 20s.
So you would do that as opposed to if you had ace, king, queen?
No, it's not they're not blanket rules. It just means that's if you're going to lead low, that's what you'll do.
Oh.
Clearly, if you have a sequence like ace, king, queen, you're not going to lead low.
Get
Right, you're going to do the right thing. It's
It's just if you didn't have a sequence,
You're nothing else, and you don't.
right, exactly. So, and this is just like what we mentioned earlier. All the stuff that's on the right hand side is constructive bidding. Those are things like where you and your partner are bidding together. All the stuff that's on the left is mainly whenever you're overcalling or advancing and getting in the opponent's way. Those are for auctions that involve everybody, right? You don't get talked about a lot because you kind of want to have some understanding of how the bidding works without opposition before you get into auctions where they do bid, mainly for a comfort measure. I think you could just teach it right out of the gate and it would help people bid competitively better, but different discussion for a different day. So, are there any questions about filling out those cards? That's really all it is. It's just about understanding that that's a summary of your methods and, looking at the check boxes and filling out what's appropriate. And that little bottom right section that we didn't go over, that's the area for if you have anything that you want to write down and you don't feel like you've explained anything, you just write it down in that bottom section. That's your handy little cheat sheet there. No, I want my hands. Yeah, there's boxes down there too. If you play things like new minor forcing or whatever, forcing.
Do you recommend new minor forcing?
At some point, yes. I
Or
want.
just about to learn this?
Okay. If you're going about already reading it, it never hurt to read it. Whether you play it or not is a different matter, but at least being aware that it exists is important.
but when we start playing it, then we'll check that.
Yeah.
And you have to alert it?
Yeah, there's parts of that that are alertable, yes. Okay, so, if there are any other questions on anything there, we'll go into some of the rulings. This is kind of the fun part, because we get to sort of make the mistakes of their table and go from there. So if you want to pull out the cards in that board, and we'll just be going over kind of the most common things that people see as far as irregularities. And normally what that involves is either not following suit or revoking or, messing up the bidding somehow, either by bidding out of turn or bidding at the wrong level. And, you might have done this yourselves. I've done it a handful of times. Yeah, you'll mean to bid like 2 diamonds and you'll bid at 1 diamond or something like that. So we'll talk about like what you should expect to see in these situations and, understanding kind of what the normal repercussions are. So on this hand, East deals, and we're going to be using this hand for the remainder of our discussion. And not quite yet. No, I need to erase that board because it looks disgusting. So we're going to kind of put out the cards that we were bidding this auction. So if you want to play down 3 spades, you're going to lay down 3 no trump, and we're just going to have the auction present at the table for a second, okay? So I can erase the board. I put this down only for convenience's sake. Let's see. Wait, let's think right here. Okay, so we're talking about revokes, and that happens in the play. So you have to have an auction first before this can happen. Okay. So South ends up playing 3 no trump, and West is on the. Let's say West leads. The 4 of hearts. Okay. So West wants to put down the 4 of hearts. And Horseman comes down. Okay. So.
Now, if I had a Queen Jack, you would not suggested opening 3 spades?
I would have, but for what your rules are, you wouldn't, because it's not quite written as a
What
suit.
about her leading the heart when her bid was a spade?
She probably has a slightly better suit of her own, or she thinks the partner's not going to be able to set up that suit in the play. So this example is mainly just to illustrate like a situation where this comes up and it's common, and so if West leads the 4 of hearts, notice that East is kind of short, and this is where I see people goof up a lot. Is that the card gets hidden and they don't see the suit. So let's say the declare plays the 2 from dummy, and we'll say East plays the 2 of diamonds or something. Okay.
Okay, the card got stuck or something.
Yeah, exactly. So at this point, before you or your partner have played the next trick, you can look at your card and say, oh, wait a minute, I pulled the wrong card. Okay. In the laws, they call this a revoke being established or not. And if your partner or you have played the next trick, the revoke is said to be established because it's like you've already gone to the next thing. You've already agreed that first trick was okay. Does that make sense? Yeah. So whenever it's once it's established, and you realize it's happened, you call the director and you do the rule, and we'll talk about it in a second. When it's not established, though, you should still call the director, and normally what they'll do is they'll have you take back the card, and if your opponent has played, take back their card and continue as necessary, and then they kind of stay around and worry about things later. So right now in the situation you're in, so at this point, let's say I have a heart, right? So the first thing you're going to do is call the director, okay? Get into the habit of that, okay? So
She calls the director.
any of you can call a director. Yeah, any of you can call a director. they kind of frown on dummy calling because of, dummy's limitations, but, it's not the worst thing in the world, but just if you're dummy, just kind of keep quiet until the hand's over, okay? That's just good practice. So if you get a call, the director's going to come over and ask, what's happened, and somebody's going to say, okay, well, I realize that I haven't followed suit or revoked whatever. Okay, so I'm going to play the next trick. You have, right? So at this point, the clerk's going to tell you, you can take back your card, you can take back your card, you can follow suit. Okay? You can take back yours because at this point, we have gone far enough where you can't do anything about it. So if you would have done something different based off her play, you're not punished for playing the case. Does that kind of make sense?
Yes, but when we've had situations and they'd have to put the card over here and play it on the next play and all that stuff.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
That's a different scenario.
Yeah, it's different. Yeah. So, and this is whatever has been established.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
So,
we just pick that up. There's no harm, no foul.
right, exactly.
And then I just pop out the red
Yeah, so
heart.
you put a 7 of hearts and
Oh, ours is
Play
always
for it.
much worse than this.
yeah.
Ours is
Party lashes.
Wait.
Right.
I
So
just put the wrong one. Now, if I did that, you can't take that back out there. He played that.
no, you can't, and that was the thing. So whenever that's actually a different ruling, I guess.
I know.
As to,
But
like-
now I realize I don't need to.
Yeah, but
check.
just for the sake of correcting for the revoke, you're allowed to take back your card. So like if you played an unnecessarily high card to win
Right,
the trick,
on the
this is
second
right. This is where you can fix it, and there's no penalty because it wasn't your fault. Does that make sense?
But on the second time around, I started with the jack back.
Right.
And I don't
That would
need
be
to. That
yeah.
is my fault.
That's
I
a different-
keep it down there.
Right. That's a different ruling. Right.
I don't like
Okay.
it,
So let's say though, I want you to just kind of take back your card and put it in the diamond and turn over the trick and declare lead anything to the next trick. Okay.
And we don't realize it or something.
Yeah. Just everybody kind of is like.
Nobody said anything.
Okay. So now let's say
Now it's.
Yeah. It declare leads the next trick. You've already played to this next trick, okay? At this point, the revoke is established. So now if somebody wakes up and realizes what's happened, okay, you call the director over, the director says what's happened, and you say, well, we have an established revoke, trick 1 or trick 7 or whatever. And he's just going to tell you, okay, he's going to ask you if you want the trick on the revoke, and you're going to answer. And he's probably going to linger around when you play out the hand. And basically, if you've won the trick on which you've revoked, and you won another trick after that, the non-offending side gets 2 tricks. So it's kind of like, you're repaying for your error and then one more just because, right? If you haven't won anything afterwards, you don't worry about it. And if you haven't won the trick on which you revoked, you only transfer 1 trick. And the idea is that, sometimes it just doesn't make that big a difference whether you revoked or not. So,
Okay, we're still not realizing it yet.
yeah, so you would play it out, and then if you sometimes you just go unrealized and you can't do anything about it. But anytime you think there's been something, you should call the director. Okay, they'll walk you through it the same way that we're doing it now. But does that idea kind of make sense? Once the revoke is established, there's always a 1 or 2 trick restitution, and it just depends on whether you've won the trick on which you've revoked and whether you've won any tricks that have happened afterwards. And the idea is just that anything that the revoke has caused to be against the non-offending side is getting rectified. And
So since I didn't take a trick, it
Nothing
wouldn't be
much
as bad.
right, and so the nice thing is that
There is no
there would only be a 1 trick penalty for that, right? Because you didn't win the trick that you made an established revoke on, right?
What? Hey, what happens if she puts a really good card down by mistake?
Well, that's a good question. So,
I mean, she forgot it was no.
so it's the same thinking though. Like if she revokes and it hasn't been established, she calls the director and normally he gets taken back. Right. The trouble, and this is really a law that is involved in all the laws, is that sometimes you'll make a play or a remark or there'll be some kind of inference in the bidding, and because there was an irregularity with that information, you have what's called unauthorized information. And because you're supposed to be bidding and playing without any kind of issues, right? There shouldn't be any revokes or playing of aces whenever you're not supposed, things like that. Opening when it's not your turn to open. And that information allows all the players to observe information about that person's hand they wouldn't otherwise be entitled to necessarily. So, like, if she plays the ace of spades really fast, her partner may not have known that she'd held that card. It might have been unclear. There may not have been a way to reason that she has the ace of spades. And so that affects her defense. It also affects your play as declare. So when that happens, call the director, and they'll normally tell you to continue playing out the hand, and they'll look at it later and ask you if her play affected the hand, how the hand was played. Because if you've played the ace of spades out of turn and they were going to take all the tricks anyway, nobody really cares. There's not going to be any adjustment. But if what you did affected the play somehow, normally the director adjusts the score based on what was most likely to happen had the infraction not occurred. They're supposed to be. They're not always, but a lot of this stuff doesn't happen as much as you think it does, but it happens enough where you have to have the book in front of you.
Woo! All right. So you just put your king over there in this pile.
Yeah. So does the revoke idea make sense? Because that's really all it is
Because it's not going to affect the play when
I just want to show you where it is here.
Now, I don't know what was the official rule. Oh. He said you just play it, and then it doesn't make any difference. You just let it go, didn't he?
Yeah, but I started to lead it, and you said no.
Oh, you were going to lead it. Oh, it was the lead. It wasn't on the trick.
No.
It was the next card. Gotcha.
I played a small one of those because I thought it was Trump.
Gotcha. So now I think
So the other thing, I guess I skipped over this, and this is probably what you were talking about earlier. So in the situation where it's not established, it actually does become a major penalty card. Okay, so if we went back to the situation earlier where I told you, like your partner hasn't played the trick yet, and you realize you notice it, you call the director over. They're going to make you keep the card out, but whenever they're looking at the adjustment of tricks, they'll do the same kind of process we talked about. It's just that whenever you have that card that you've misplayed, it stays out face up. Most of the time, it's an ace through a 10, and you have to you have to play your first legal opportunity. And in this situation, it's just automatically designated the major penalty card. But the way it's cited, a major penalty card is normally the ace through the 10, unless it says otherwise. But in this situation, you played it deliberately, and that's why it's done. So when it happens, call, and they'll take care of it. They'll make you leave the card out and adjust accordingly. So does that make sense? A lot of verbiage, but that's you've seen it happen a couple of times. It's pretty normal.
All right, so here's the. Do we keep going? Do you want us to keep going?
Yeah, go ahead and put the cards kind of back in your hands. We're going to talk about another situation that happens a bit. Okay, so let's say you're in the same contract. Okay, so let me pull it up here. Let's say that South is playing 3-no trump again. Okay, so by convention, West is supposed to lead, right? Because he's the left of the person who's been, So sometimes it's not what happens, though. Sometimes East makes the lead. So East, let's say that you lead the 5 of spades, okay?
Is this by mistake?
Yes, this is by mistake, yeah. So whenever there's an opening lead out of turn, you call the director. Okay, so the director comes over. Declarer basically has 5 options here at this point, okay? You can either accept or reject the lead, okay? That's like the first big decision. Now, if you accept it, you get to decide who's dummy. That's the easy way to say it, okay? You can put your hand down and let partner play it, or you can keep your hand up and play out of your hand yourself. So let's say that you wanted to, after you call the director, he gives you a full spiel of options. Let's say you want to accept the lead of the 5 of spades. okay, because it makes sense. So at this point, if dummy doesn't put their hand down like this, you can decide whether you want to play the hand or whether you want partner to play it. Right? So it would kind of look like this. So if you wanted to play the hand, you just have my hands put down, you would play out of your hand in clockwise order. If you wanted to play the hand, though, you want me to play the hand, you can put your cards down on the table and you become dummy, and then I would play from your hand. Does that kind of make sense? You accept the lead, you can either punish your partner or
But
play.
is that comes to whether I can take that trick or not.
Right, exactly. That'd be something you would think about
Right.
before you make the decision. of course.
Exactly.
Right. And that's why it's important to think
I
about
don't like
this, 'cause-
that lead. I mean.
Yeah, so you may decide to reject it. And so when you decide to reject the lead, you have a couple of options as well. So you can either make that card a major penalty card, which means she'll have to keep it out until she can play it the first time she can. Or you can look at your other opponent and say, you have to lead that suit or you may not lead that suit. And that's true as long as they're on lead. So to clarify this, let's say you reject the lead,
I
okay?
reject the lead.
So now the player's going to look and say, you can tell her to either lead a spade or not lead a spade. Okay? And let's say you don't want her to lead a spade because your spade is between the outside.
I don't want you to lead the spade.
Okay, so you can lead anything that's not a spade, and that card's going to go back in her hand. So,
I take it back.
right. So let's say that you led
Correct way it was supposed to.
Right, exactly. So then you would play it as normal. Now, if that card wins the trick, that condition is still true. You can't just suddenly switch a spade. That rule stays for as long as you are on lead from here until whenever you get off the hook.
What do you mean that rule?
And then, so if she wins this trick, she can't lead a spade again because of what you told her to do.
Oh.
You can't lead a spade,
Oh.
right?
Oh.
But right,
She
but,
gets them through lead.
And then it's always gonna go around this way, it's never gonna go back to where it should be.
It is where it should be. You are where it's supposed to be.
Oh,
I was
that's
wondering
right,
if
that's
She
right.
has done.
right.
That off turn, okay.
But now, if somebody else takes a trick, then
It's over.
Yeah, then it's over.
If I take it, then.
Correct. It's
the
not
end of
going to
that.
punish up the whole hand just for that, as long as you're on
That's
lead.
it.
Right, until I get, until I lose. I've never had that situation.
me either.
So does that idea make sense?
Yeah, but I don't
But-
remember it, but that's very.
Right, but see, it helps to kind of see it done
Oh,
and hear it because sometimes it's your advantage to do one thing over the other, and that's, and part of the reason that they write the law this way is because they're trying to make it easier for the declarer to get back to a normal result. So if there's, unauthorized information from the lead,
Oh, yeah, and it could be.
you can work around that a little bit. So, and if this happens like mid-play, you can always accept the lead out of turn. But you don't have to. And the ruling for that is a little bit different, but if I'm not mistaken,
But see, I don't have the ace or the king, and I don't know what my partner has, so I really don't want to stay with him. She isn't stuff down here. I think she did. Ace, king, oh, sure. Because I don't have, all I have is this. So that's a
Yeah.
lead for me.
I'm trying to find it here. It is defenders out of turn.
I did.
So it happens in the middle of the play. If you're a declarer, there's no penalty, right? Your opponents can accept the lead out of turn, but if they don't, you can take it back and there's no issue. But if a defender does it, that card is going to become a major penalty card, should you say, I don't accept it. So, like, if that trick we did just a second ago was in the middle of the hand, so after trick one, if the declarer does it, the director's going to come over and ask, do you accept this lead? No, then you take it back and you lead from the right hand. But if the defender does it, they're going to ask, do you accept the lead? No, that card stays out and, you go as normal. So does that make sense? Okay. And the other thing, I don't memorize these because you need to have a law book with you when you're making these rulings. It's just good practice. A lot of directors know them well enough that they don't use them. and if it works for them, that's fine. But it's always helpful to be able to look at the book and say, because some people get kind of snappy at you, and you say, well, look, it's right here. And if you have a problem with it, you can appeal it. So, does that make sense?
Yes. Now, are you going to, we often have, in playing the hand, we lead from the wrong place.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any penalty for that?
As declarer or as defender?
Well, you're right.
If you're declaring a hand, let's say you lead from dummy when you're supposed to be in your hand.
Right.
Oh,
As soon as your opponent plays that trick, it's been accepted. Her playing is kind of like saying, okay, well, that must have been from the right hand, right? If she doesn't do that, and you get the director call, same process as before, and or it was the lead accepted? No. Okay, then it goes back. And I think, actually,
We usually
Yeah, see-
before it goes out, it's not your lead or something.
right, exactly. And it can always be accepted. And because declarer acts, or because dummy acts as a agent for declarer, it works the same way. So, and again, I'm citing the law because that's what it says, is that, if they let out a turn from either his hand or dummy's, the lead can be accepted. And if the defenders choose differently, then the option expressed by the player next in turn, the irregular lead shall prevail. So, all that's saying is, like, let's say declare leads out of turn, the fourth person in the play can't say anything. They're not the next in line in the play. You can't talk to your partner about, okay, well, hey, partner, what should we do? Because, like, that's a lot of unauthorized information there.
Once she plays, I was supposed to leave it. I pulled it off from over here.
Mm-hmm.
And she plays, it's a done deal. Is that what I heard?
Right, exactly.
She can't do anything about it.
Mm-hmm.
We gotta follow.
Right.
Oh,
So that makes sense?
okay. Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to put the cards away for a second. We're just going to look at the bidding on this hand, okay?
okay.
So, and East open, so you're getting ready to bid 3 spades, right?
Mhm.
So let's say that you pull out the 2 spade. Just go ahead and pull out the 2 spade bid,
Okay.
okay?
I've done this.
And yeah, so let's say at this point you realize, uh-oh, I meant to bid, something. So you're going to call the director. And this rule's kind of fuzzy and fun because we need to determine whether you had a slip of the mind or whether you just kind of picked out the wrong card physically. So oftentimes what a good director will do in this situation is they'll pull you away from the table and talk to you about what you were thinking. They'll say, well, what did you see when you were making the bid? And the short story here is that if it's apparent that you were having a slip of the mind, and it's going to stand, because this is a game of concentration as well as all the other fun stuff, logic, whatever. And if you slip your mind, it's too bad. If you just had a physical mishap and you were kind of grabbing the wrong card, that's different. You wanted to bid 3 spades, you just didn't physically do it, right?
So I'd go over and say, well, I had 7. I was really meaning to bid 3. That's what I would.
Right.
Is that what you would do?
Yeah, something like that. So you want to make it clear whenever it's a physical issue, not a mental issue, that you say something to the effect of like, well, I meant to bid 3 spades, but I grabbed the wrong card.
And then what does he say about that?
Well, left-hand opponent, which would be you in this situation, will always have the option to accept the bid, right?
The change.
Right, and if they don't, they'll kind of go through this little walk that we've been going in.
I mean, why would I care if she gets 2 spades or 3 spades?
And that's just, it would just depend on the hand. I'm the kind of person where I don't particularly care.
What?
I'm the kind of person where I don't particularly care what goes on, because most of the time I want to achieve a normal auction.
Right.
I'd rather than just correct it and go on their way.
Correctly.
Right, and that's normally what will happen in this situation.
Now, she could have pulled out 2 clubs by mistake, too. I mean, the black and the black.
Right, and so this is where we get into the kind of the nitty gritty of, okay, so if you don't accept it, what happens? And let me pull this up here because I actually like the way they go about explaining this better than I do. So basically, in this situation, if you can substitute the call for something that says about the same thing, the auction's going to go as it normally would without any issues. So, and what they define as similar has to do not with the hand you're holding, but with the definition of the bid. So when you lay down 2 spades, that meant you had 6 spades and 6 to 10 points. So the difference between opening 3 spades and 2 spades is about a length of card, and that's, you can kind of think of that as being pretty similar. So they would normally accept that now. But had you opened 2 clubs or something, now the situation is different because the call that you've put down is very different from the call that you needed to make. And that's, and if you think about it, that seems like more of a slip of the mind than anything else. And, where do they describe that here? There's a great little, I think it's 23C now. No, it's 23A. So you can put down, they call it a comparable call, and it's comparable if it has the same or similar meaning as that attributable to the withdrawn call. So the 2 spades, would be that call we're comparing our 3 spade bid to. It could also be a subset, meaning that, let's say that, just kind of a different example for a moment. Let's say you made an opening bid that showed 15 to 17 points. If you made an opening bid instead that showed 15 to 17 points and 4-4 in the majors, that'd be a subset, because it can kind of imagine being in the same little group. And you see this a lot whenever people misbid like Stamen or something. If you're making a bid that has kind of the same purpose, and this is again where it's important for the director to call you away from the table, because you might see something like, well, I thought the partner opened the no trump, I was bidding 2 clubs, but instead the partner opened 2 no trump, and that's, you're really trying to do the same thing. We're really looking for intent in this situation. Does that kind of make sense? If you're just tuning it out, that's on you. But if you were trying to do something, you just had an issue with your grabbing it or something, or you were making a call that's kind of close, then we'll normally let it go. Okay. A lot of rambling, but does that kind of make sense? You can't replace these calls with a double or redouble unless it's comparable, and it'd be a very rare situation where it would be. So. Now,
That would be real mean to make her play 2 clubs.
right, and again, it really is just a matter of whether it's not accepted or not, because she gets a choice whether what she wants to bid after that. I talk about the comparable calls, and the other term they use is the next most sufficient bid. So let's say that. Let's say that your right-hand opponent had opened 2 diamonds and you bid 1 spade instead of 2 spades. You can correct it to the next available strain, and it's considered, comparable most of the time as well. But you get a choice of what you want to pick. You don't have to do that. If you decide to do anything that isn't comparable, or the next strain up, or next level up, I should say, then your partner has to pass for 1 round of the auction, and only 1 round. Okay, so, yeah. So, and just to make it sound easier, basically what we're looking for is whenever you make an insufficient bid, the bid that you made insufficiently, is it, is your intent the same when you made the insufficient bid as with the bid you're correcting? Right, and if it is, we normally let everything continue, and if it isn't, then we put in the partner has to pass for 1 round kind of penalty.
And the director tells her she doesn't. We at the table don't decide this. The director.
Yeah, no, the director decides this. The only other person that will be involved in this is left-hand opponent of the offender, who gets to choose whether to accept this or not. That's the first thing that will happen. So, director's going to come over. He's going to say what happened. Well, I made an insufficient bid. I meant to bid this. Okay, so. Does left-hand opponent want to accept this? If you do, then you can't do anything. But if you don't, then we go through that process of, okay, step over, let's talk about this. Right. So that makes sense.
And there are times when you should have been calling the director, I guess, if you've just been going on, but just put that in the
Yeah.
comment, who's picked that one.
Right, and there's a lot of like this next one we're going to talk about, like bidding and passing out of turn. They're real similar in nature because we're trying to achieve the same thing. We're thinking about, okay, what was your intent? So in this example, so East is dealer, right? And East is supposed to open. Let's say that South doesn't see that and opens a club instead, right? So what you have here is an opening out of turn, or bid out of turn. So you call the director, and okay, so they've opened out of turn. So what you do depends on whose turn it was to open. So in our example here, if South opened the club instead of what's happened here, South's right-hand opponent is who is supposed to open. And so when we look at the law book, we reference that part. And if we can repeat our call, we're supposed to, or make other comparable call otherwise. And if it isn't comparable, partner's going to have the same penalty where they're going to pass their next turn. So to relate that to this example, let's say that East opens 3 spades, okay? If South bids 3 no trump, North has to pass in their next round. If South bids something like 4 clubs, which looks comparable, because we're essentially showing the same thing, arguably, then we might go ahead and allow the auction to continue. I won't get into the real nitty-gritty of deciding what's comparable because that's a mess for the director to deal with and not you, but does that kind of make sense, though, how that works? If you're bidding whenever it's partner's turn or your left-hand opponent's turn, it's basically the same thing, but they get their bids in first, and the same idea. You can bid whatever you want. It's just whether it's similar or not depends on whether your partner is banned for a round or not. Okay. So it might be important to you if you want. Let's say you make a bid out of turn and you think your opponents are going to both pass. You might decide to take a shot in the dark and try something and just hope that it works just to avoid a terrible result. That's kind of why you need to know these things. It's also good to know because sometimes directors don't know what they're talking about. And so if they do something that you think, no, then you can ask them, well, where is that in the law book? Why are you doing this? Okay. Any questions about that? The other thing that you see it here a lot, and you see it in tournaments occasionally, is when people make hesitations when either bidding or playing. And this really boils down to unauthorized information. And so I'll give you a classic example. You have a position on the dummy with like King Jack, or some kind of finessing position, and you need to figure out where like the ace and the queen is. So, or you might just need to figure out where the queen is. The trouble that we've had in the past is that sometimes players will hesitate when they don't have the queen. Sometimes people will hesitate for other unnecessary reasons. And you get other situations too where, sometimes it's okay to think about what you're bidding or what you're playing, but you can give your partner information based off of the fact that you have to think about it. And so what these laws try to do is help us distinguish from what's appropriate time to think and consider the hand. When are we suggesting information to the partner, and how do we deal with the hand whenever there's been information conveyed? Because if you hesitate and partner can figure out from the hesitation you have an ace, that's a problem. That's a really big problem. Now you have unfair advantage over all the other pairs because of that reason. So what the law says is basically if your partner conveys unauthorized information, you can't act on it, okay? You need to do whatever you were going to do without that information. It gets a little bit fuzzy as directors because we go through this little process when situations like this happen. And normally it's like a bid out of turn. So somebody will make an opening bid out of turn, and we'll look at the auction later and we'll say, okay, well, they got to a spot they might not have gotten to. So what we're really trying to figure out is, was there a hesitation? Was there unauthorized information? And if so, did the partner of that person choose an alternative that could have been suggested by that information, right? We're looking for cause and effect. That's all this stuff says. Right? Does that kind of make sense? You don't see really, like, it happens a lot here, but people don't call the director, and so that's why we don't get to see the ruling as much. But like, if it does happen, what the director's probably going to do is let you play out the board normally, and then kind of take it back and look and see. Okay, well, they're going to go through that checklist and ask you a couple questions and say, is this? What were you thinking after your partner made this bid? Where there was hesitation. And they'll pull aside the partner hesitating and say, well, what were you thinking about when you did this? Okay, so they're not trying to this isn't like they're police investigating you and looking to see who the culprit is. They're just trying to understand what was happening, because this is all about restoring equity. If I hesitate with an ace and it gives my side an unfair advantage, we need to correct that, and vice versa. So that's all that we're doing here. So, are there any questions about that?
What about hesitating over the box, pulling a card out of here?
It's the same idea. So, you get a lot when people are inviting. Like, if the partner opens a heart, and I'll kind of,
Yeah.
So, normally what this is conveyed is that I'm kind of on the top of my range, or the bottom of my range.
Yes, or maybe I can do this.
Right. So, and it's the same. Yeah. If that happens, your opponents might call and say, well, he hesitated when he was pulling out the box. You're normally allowed, anywhere, I think the benchmark's about 7 seconds to kind of think about things normally. And if you're in a high level auction, 10 is a good rule of thumb. But, so if you kind of deviate from what's normally expected,
So you've got 7 seconds to decide your.
more or less, yeah. I mean, if you're starting out, people are going to give you a little bit of leeway, because the trouble in making these rulings is that beginners see things differently than better players do, and so we have different expectations. I mean, a beginner's going to look at a hand that an expert might automatically bid game on and wonder whether this is the right thing to do or not. That's fine. That's appropriate. That should be expected.
Is it better not to touch it, just look at it?
Yeah, and that's really the.
Don't pull the pants out real bad.
Well, that's the other reason I wanted to do this, is because I want to have people quit doing these behaviors, just don't touch it. Just keep down here and think about it before this, because you'll save yourself the embarrassment of a director call, and you're going to be able to improve your thinking better, because when people kind of fondle their boxes, what they're telling the world is they don't know what's going on with the hand. And so, as a better player, I can make more accurate assumptions about your hand and the play just based off that hesitation. So it's to your advantage in a number of ways to be aware of these rules and understand that you don't do this all the time, then you're serving yourself and your opponents better. So. And this is the law here. It just says that you can't use any information your partner's conveyed in a way that isn't either directly through the bid made or through the card played. You can't take into account mannerisms or saying something or foot tap or whatever. You can't do that. You can take into account what you think about how well you're doing or the traits of your opponents. And that's caused some issues, because sometimes people, as opponents, will hesitate with the ace. And you might say, oh, okay, well, he hesitated, I'm going to do this. That's a nightmare for a director, because, the declarer is allowed to make those assumptions, but we have a little bit of unethical behavior over here with the deliberate hesitation with that card. So, don't worry about those situations. Let the director worry about it, but just understand that, here you're allowed to draw those inferences from your opponents. Just be careful. That's what we like to tell people. I don't want you going out there and saying, every time somebody hitches, they have an ace, because that's you're going to get some bad results, and you're going to wonder if you can get restitution for it, and sometimes you can't, and you shouldn't expect it. But that's all the stuff that's pretty common. And if you ever get a chance, this is the boring version of the laws. the one that I can actually understand and read from better, which I need to buy a new copy of, I think they have a new version. Yeah, there we go. It's called Duplicate Decisions, and it's a great book because it's like the law book, but they provide examples as well as the laws in clear English. And I was going to bring my copy with me today, but it's like the '08 version, so it's not quite up to date. But you can access it online. I'm going to have links on the website for all this stuff, so you can flip through it. And that way, if you ever get curious, like let's say you end up at a club game next week and somebody revokes, and you're wondering, okay, well, were we like treated fairly? Was the ruling made properly? You can look here, and I want to look at the revoke somewhere in here. We can look under here and say, okay, so if you revoke and this is before it's established, the withdrawn card, is a major penalty card, and if it's from declare or dummy's hand, there's no penalty. And this is a lot easier to read than all that dense nonsense in the law book. So I don't know if they have a copy of that here or not. And you don't need to worry about memorizing the whole thing at all. It's just I want you to kind of have some awareness of that this is what happens, because you'll become a better player for it. You won't do dumb things like fuss with the box or think longer than you have to about certain decisions. You'll start understanding that being an ethical player is about realizing that the way in which you do things also conveys information. So you don't need to make every bid in 5 seconds, but just know that if you're kind of taking a while to do something, somebody told me if you're thinking too long about making a move in chess, you're always going to make the wrong move. So take your 7 to 10 seconds and just, if you can't think of a decision, just flip a coin in your head, and worry about it later. So are there any other questions on any of this? That last part's kind of dense feeling, but, hopefully it makes you feel a little bit more comfortable with understanding that when a director comes over to your table, they're not there to punish you. Because a lot of the reasons why people don't call is because of that. And that's not the right way to think about it at all. We're just simply trying to understand what's going on. And, as you can tell, it's kind of a lengthy ordeal in itself. Sometimes. So
did you have a favorite book that you recommend for beginners, for getting going and following bidding and what's your favorite? I know that's too many.
As far as books I recommend, I have a handful of them on the website here, and as far as what you guys should probably read, are you looking to learn just about like bidding without people interfering, or like Mike Lawrence is a great author, and if you're wanting to know anything about like overcalls or balancing and bidding competitive auctions, he's a great author. He kind of writes the way he thinks.
Easy to follow is what I like.
I found him easy to follow only because he would kind of look at the bid and talk about, like literally whatever he was thinking, he would write it down on paper. And some of those ideas are a little bit advanced, but the way it's organized is pretty straightforward. Like this book here is a good one for auctions, kind of like whenever you have 3 or more people bidding. That's a great book. It's called Contested Auction.
What do you think about the Schmoit's Points things? They're always over there.
I've never read them. I own a few of them. Marty Bergen's a good player. He's a decent author. Read it if you want, but like this guy provides like concepts, not just rules. I feel like Marty just puts out rules, and people just kind of, not that he doesn't explain why they work, but just people kind of take the rule and they leave. That's not what you need to do. You need to understand why you're doing what you're doing. So anything by Lawrence is good. As far as
does he he have Lawrence over there? There's some Lawrence over
Yeah,
there?
this whole little section right here is all. Yeah, I'm just trying to think about good bidding books.
Well, that's good. I'll write down that Lawrence.
Mike Lawrence, okay.
I don't really think that there'd be a big issue with whatever you pick as far as, just trying to understand basics. I would read something like a bridge for dummies or a bridge for
Bridge for Dummies, I do like that.
that one's by Eddie Cantor. He's a good author,
I think
and
he's easy to follow.
he really is, and he's got a lot of books in defense that you want to read at some point. And he's good at talking about, kind of like Mike, how do you think? They used to be a very good partnership together back in the day.
Eddie Cantor,
Yeah.
He does a lot of articles in the Bridge magazine.
I just started getting that.
Did you? I got one today, yesterday.
Yeah, I got one.
And the ones that are for beginners are plenty challenging, just to read
Yes,
those.
they are.
I don't have any of this stuff here.
That's too good.
I see there's points here, but there's not really any, not any great books about this sort of bidding basics. We kind of got those the last 2 years.
Dan is teaching one that's on the play of the hand. Have you heard of that one?
I haven't seen what he's talking about, honestly, but is he teaching from a book or?
Yeah.
From that book.
Did you put in the session?
I did, I don't have the book, I don't know. I started
Yeah, I mean, if he's teaching from anything from Cantor or Mike, it's probably worth going to. And Dan will listen to you and answer some questions. So I mean, that's probably a safe bet. Yeah, but as far as fundamentals, that's what I would do.
No, wait, no. Friday on the 1st and 3rd. I'm getting my glasses. It was good. It was kind of playing a little early. We had to be there at 12:15. No, it's just included in the bridge. And Friday,
We should do it. It's still going on in practice?
it's just on the 1st and 3rd Friday of the month.
It's different strength.
Now, do you guys play on Mondays at all?
I haven't yet, but I do know there's a game on Monday night.
It is on Monday. It's a higher level than,
Yes.
oh, we play on Friday afternoon.
Okay.
Yeah.
Play 99ers.
Because what I'm thinking about doing is starting some kind of a before game lecture before Monday evening games. I have to talk to the various people about doing that. But as of right now, there aren't any other lessons scheduled for me at the moment. But I want to try to get a couple more in before I leave for school.
Plays Monday night.
They really do. They've expanded the beginner groups here to a point where it's kind of scary.
That one is
But,
open up to, is it open, what do they call it, open pairs, or what is that Monday night?
We could look it
I don't know
up.
what it's called, but I know some people from the Friday group go to the Monday.
Oh, absolutely, but there's also very good players there too. I mean, better than.
I'm glad you told me, I didn't know that.
Oh,
It
absolutely.
used to be only good players.
I mean, it's like the Smiths and people like
Oh,
that.
and then they open it.
Dan plays it
Oh,
as a player.
okay.
And, Friday is, you can't add, you can't add.
Right,
So
and
it's really
still-
comfortable on Friday.
Yeah. And I like Tuesday even better because you can ask questions.
Yeah, and we've gotten better, we don't have to ask the question first time, I ask question.
The results. Let me see how they stratted Monday, because it looks like Monday is like a under 500. Yeah, these are limited. So yeah, these are people who are 500 or less.
See, Bruce Antman, he's the teacher. Third.
Bruce is a pretty strong player, but his match point rating is a little lower than what you might expect, which leads me to those master point ratings don't mean anything.
1, 2, 3, we know. But,
Yeah.
I mean, Nancy goes to that, there are people who go. She'd probably never win.
And that's the thing. I mean, if I